My name is Ramon Gomez, and I run corruptionasart.tumblr.com, which is a pretty cool blog, I guess. And this video is basically to sort of outline my whole sort of workflow, I guess you would call it, and specifically in using the RealTime Corruptor over here. I'm not going to go into that much detail with the Corruptor in this video, since it's really only one piece of my entire process for creating content for the blog. So I might do that at some other time. This is just sort of an overview of everything that I do to get from, you know, playing a video game to the stuff that appears on the actual Tumblr. So before I get into the actual Corruptor, this is the website for the RealTime Corruptor, and while it's been in development for a pretty long time now, several years, and unfortunately in the past few months, everything seems to have gone dark, which is a problem because the newest release, version 0.78, has a few weird bugs that I've definitely run into, where games will just randomly decide to run at 50 or 75% speed. And so I would recommend that instead of using the newest version, that you would go to over here to the previous version and use 0.75c, which is what I'm running right here and what I'll be using to demonstrate the actual corruptions. So getting down to it, the RealTime Corruptor, especially in its very sort of default settings, is actually a very easy to corruptor to just sort of pick up and go with. Like, for example, like I have everything set to how it would come out of the box, pretty much. And well, if I unpause the game, if it'll actually unpause, there we go. I mean, you can just sort of play the video game and the ROM will just start automatically corrupting itself. It will corrupt 1 byte of memory every frame, and over time, as you can see, things become more and more corrupted. And, you know, there have been lots and lots of videos put out by the Vinesauce people and other people on YouTube and Twitch that have shown basically this, with various ROMs, various configurations, some getting into the really advanced stuff with the glitch harvester. But, I mean, this is really it. I mean, you can just pick up, you just download the Corruptor, put in a ROM, and this is what you get, pretty much. And, you know, if this is what you're looking for, then this is great, you know? You can have lots and lots of fun just sort of doing this. But for what I do, I go into some more, not exactly advanced stuff, but just different configurations that are meant to induce just the most weird stuff happening possible. So getting down into the options here, first thing up here is what different corruption engine you want to use. For the most part, you're going to want to use the top option, which is a Nightmare engine, which is just a very direct corruption of memory. The other ones have their uses. For instance, like if you want to corrupt specifically the music for an SNES game, you would want to use the distortion engine. But the problem is, for a lot of sort of lesser known systems, less supported systems, I guess, a lot of these don't work and will just start immediately crashing in a really ugly way that causes crash loops, which are no fun at all. So just generally speaking, you want to use the Nightmare engine, and the Nightmare engine has 3 different settings for if you want to corrupt. Just every byte that it corrupts just becomes a random number, or if you want to just shift that number up or down a little bit, or if you want either one. Either one of these settings can be useful in a lot of different situations. You can get varying results. It's not exactly night and day, but it's definitely something. And so over here, the error delay is just how often you want it to corrupt, and the intensity is just how many bytes you want it to corrupt when it corrupts. And steps here, I'm assuming the documentation isn't very clear on this, but I'm assuming that what they mean by steps, how many steps it corrupts, is essentially how many frames, either 50 frames or 60 frames, depending on whether you're on a PAL ROM or not. Where if I set it to 1, every single frame it's going to corrupt 28 different bytes of memory. But if I set it to 22, then, you know, it'll be every 22/60ths of a second. Or, you know, if I set it to 60, then, you know, it'll do that every second. So the most interesting part of the RealTime Corruptor is the fact that you can pick which specific parts of the memory you want to corrupt. And there are a few here. This changes with every different console that you do this with. So specifically for the SNES, you've got these ones, the ones that, you know, really do a lot. For example, like this one does color palettes. Oh, once you actually start corrupting, it does color palettes. And, you know, this is generally very stable. It's just, you know, it changes some colors around, and that's basically it. There's audio stuff, which, I mean, if you're using the Nightmare engine, like, it just cuts out the music and eventually it just crashes. But if you go to the distortion engine to use this, then eventually you start getting pretty interesting stuff. If it'll actually cooperate with me. Oh, we got a little bit there. But anyway, moving on. Cart ROM is generally, if you see ROM, that's something you don't want to mess with because that's actually affecting the ROM instead of the RAM. That's something that, you know, if you're using save states like I usually do, that stuff is carried over because it's actually affecting the ROM itself, not just the memory. The next up is just video RAM, which, there we go. It's just, you know, mixing up, just video. And, well, that was a weird way to die. Oh, I'm still using distortion engine, that's why. But yeah, this, you know, this just distorts what gets shown on the screen. And, you know, this is... So the weird thing is, like, a lot of people, like, this is really cool, right? I can't believe I just died the exact same way twice in a row. Like, yeah, this looks really cool. But at the same time, generally speaking, I won't use this setting when I'm creating stuff for the blog because basically, to me, this is just one click. You know, here we go, uncorrupted, one click, and it's all happening. And I don't know, to me that's just kind of an interesting. But I know that, you know, just looking at this, like, it's actually cool, and it's, like, actually really stable. And just the way that the background moves and everything, like, it's actually really cool, but I don't know. So getting down to the settings that I actually do use, there's WRAM, which I'm pretty sure is write RAM, but I'm not 100% sure. I'm absolutely no expert when it comes to hardware at all. Like, basically all the information I have just comes off of looking at Wikipedia, and I'll actually start the corruption here. Basically, I mean, as you can see, like, I just clicked on Start Auto Corrupt, and already just look at all this. Like, this is, you know, it's still very much Super Mario World, but I mean, just look at it. So much has gone wrong, and it's like very, like, you can tell, like, this is what this game is, and this is what this game is when it's behaving very strangely. You know, it's not just, you know, random tiles and stuff appearing on the screen, like with the VRAM. And I mean, you know, while the VRAM looks good, it becomes very indistinct. It all sort of runs together, and, you know, with this setting, the WRAM, it's, you know, stuff like that'll happen, and you know, it's cool and weird, and this is basically how I do stuff, is essentially just picking a spot to save state and just letting stuff happen. And also, oh, there's a crash. And actually, hold on. So, I want to point out, you might have noticed that when the game crashed, it just popped right back up, or right back into Super Mario World, just like that. And it's because of this thing, which is the kill switch. And essentially, you know, it's got a few settings here if you wanted to restart on your own, which can be useful if you end up in a crash loop. You just hit this, and it completely resets everything back to default. But basically, getting back to the very beginning here, like when you get the emulator installed and everything, which actually you don't have to do. I don't know what I'm just babbling at this point, but basically, you unzip the thing, this is what you get. You click on this, and you go. It's not much to explain, it's just something I guess I just forgot to. So the most interesting thing that you can corrupt in pretty much every system is the system bus, which, and again, I'm no expert on hardware, but it's basically how the different parts of the video game console talk to each other, and if you corrupt that, you get, well, all sorts of weird stuff. Like, well, let's, well, right away, there you go. Yeah, I mean, this is doing a much better job of showing you what this does than I ever could. Yeah, I mean, again, you know, if you want where, oh, well, this is not great. Yeah, there's the kill switch again working. But yeah, if you want to do the real interesting stuff, you have to risk some crashes, you know. And so well, that's just great. It can be kind of frustrating sometimes. SNES games, although they look very nice when you corrupt them, the SNES is generally speaking the least stable when you corrupt it. And, you know, even when it isn't crashing, like, you end up with a lot of black screens and stuff. Which is kind of, it's kind of a shame, but, you know, it is what it is, and you just gotta work past it, you know? I end up spending a lot of time just sort of sifting through SNES games, just going through just real duds of games that just don't corrupt well at all, just to get to the good stuff like we had earlier when I was doing the F-Zero stuff. And, well, great, it crashed again. Perfect. But yeah, this is basically, like, when I'm doing the actual corruptions, like, this is what happens. You go through, you might get some good stuff like we had going before, or the game will just crash constantly. And, you know, you can mess with the corruption intensity, you can mess with different engines and stuff, but, you know, sometimes games are just gonna crash, and that's just what happens. And, I mean, it's a lot worse with other corruptors. That's for sure. So yeah, this is basically, I mean, you know, apart from, you know, nuance when it comes to specific SNES games, and specific games tend to have, you know, their own little quirks and oddities and stuff. You know, for example, like, the reason why I didn't use F-Zero is because that game is almost entirely Mode 7, and so a lot of the different parts of memory don't really do anything, because it's all in Mode 7. But yeah, okay. Yeah, great. Thanks, Mario. So I'll just run through a few of the other systems that I like to corrupt a lot. Like, you know, this is an SMS game, Sega Master System game. This is Golfamania specifically, which some stuff from this game has already been showing up a bit on the on my blog, I guess. So generally speaking, with SMS games, I just do system bus intensity. You know, it can go real high if I want it to, because generally speaking, anything that isn't an SNES is going to be pretty stable. And again, you know, you just hit go and stuff happens. Yeah. And this is another one where, if you really need to, it also has video RAM, which, you know, if I turn off the system bus, like, I mean, it's going. But generally speaking, like, if you hit video RAM, like, there you go. It's just random tiles popping up. And, you know, maybe this is all you want. Maybe you just want a golf game with occasionally that stuff showing up. And I'm very bad at this. But point is, generally speaking, you can play stuff, you can horribly break it like I do. And that's basically all there is to it. You can do the same thing with NES games. Like this one, which I had running a few minutes ago. The last time I tried to record this part of the video. And of course I'm recording this in like a billion parts because I tend to ramble or just sort of fall apart in the middle of recording this, so I'm just trying to do this as many pieces as possible just to save me for having to just do the entire thing over and over again, you know? And of course now I'm rambling, so yeah. But so the Game Boy Advance. I'm gonna get to that in a second, actually. Yeah, the Game Boy Advance, huh? Real modern system, relatively speaking. It can even do, you know, sort of 3D stuff. This is kinda Mode 7, but not really, you know. And what the problem is, if you go in with the default settings here, in the RealTime Corruptor, alright, I'll spare you. That's basically what you get. The game will just lock up, you get some horrible noises, and that's about it. And so I think this is the best way that I've found to do it so far. If I can unpause it. The best way I found to do it is just by hitting up the video RAM and the object RAM. And of course the system bus, and just hoping that it doesn't immediately crash on me. You know, like that. And I mean, that's the reason why Game Boy Advance corruptions, as cool as they are, they don't end up getting a lot of, you know, I don't do a whole lot of them because they just tend to crash a whole lot, and I mean, that's pretty much it. And well, I'm going to turn this down a bit more and just try to see if we can get to the real reason why I brought this up in the first place. Which, of course, now that I'm trying to actually show off... Oh, great. Oh, well, there you go. It's GBA splash screen corruptions, which are generally all the rage and are by far and away the most... they're by far and away the most popular things that I have going on my blog, and I mean, they just sort of happen. Like, it's just a complete crapshoot as to whether or not you're gonna end up getting one of those. And when you do, you know, it just sort of comes and goes, and that's it. You know, after a little while, you're back to this. And back to that. Game Boy Advance games crash a lot. Especially, like, if you're just doing just the regular settings, it's, I mean, that's it. You know, load state, half a second later, crashes again. And it's very frustrating. If I just do the system bus, it's the exact same thing. And, well, as much as I would love to do more with it, that's pretty much it. And I mean, there's also, I've got PC Engine stuff, which is pretty much almost exactly the same as NES stuff, and Genesis games, which, Genesis games are just very uninteresting most of the time. Like, you know, the only ones I've done are, you know, the big ones. You know, like Echo the Dolphin, Sonic the Hedgehog. Like, those corruptions work because you know what game they're from. But if I just start putting up random corruptions of random games, they're not really going to be very interesting because not a whole lot actually happens in them. And so you wouldn't really know what is different. You know what I mean? So I'm pretty much done talking about the Corruptor, so I don't know if you want me to talk in more detail about anything about that, go ahead and yell at me on Tumblr or in the YouTube comments or wherever. I'm using OBS to record all this. As you can see, not a whole lot really interesting there. I mean, I've got, you know, this is the sort of default scene that I use, and for some reason the game's not actually showing up. Let me see if I can bring that up here. I don't know, BizHawk can be kind of finicky when it comes to being captured by OBS sometimes. So, you know, usually in this big black space on the right there would be game footage, but there isn't right now. And everything else is just regular text boxes pretty much, so. Audio, everything is being mixed together using Voicemeeter. So I've got microphone, and then I'm using a virtual input here. So if I go back into the emulator, you'll see in the sound I'm just putting everything into Voicemeeter instead of playing it through my speakers or anything. And that way, you know, I can turn it down here, and then, you know, it'll be quieter both in the video and also in my ears, so I can, if I want to, you know, I could just turn this all the way down and just have something else playing, you know, music or a podcast or whatever, while I'm, you know, recording and doing all this other stuff. So that's the way I generally like to do things, sort of multitasking, right? And so the last piece, pretty much, is once I've got a video together here, like this one, which I already have recorded, is, well, how do I make an actual animated GIF out of all this? And so I have a program that I like to use called GIFcam, which is this little guy right here. You basically just stretch it out to however big you want your GIF. And then, hold on, so there's a little, you know, you just go through, like I just go through, and so I saw there was something kind of interesting there, so I'll go back a few seconds, make sure that this is running at the correct frames per second, just let it run. And, okay. You know, you just let it record that little bit. You go into edit. First of all, I like to resize this just because I like having it bigger and then resizing it down just so that it keeps the same quality. And also, you know, I need to make it smaller because if I keep it at the same size that it was a second ago, then A, it'll probably be way too big for Tumblr standards, and B, if a GIF is too big, then it just won't upload to Tumblr at all, which is awful, but it's what I've got to work with. So you know, and here you can see, like, here are all the different frames, and if I want to just, you know, capture this little bit right here, you know, I can just cut out all the frames before and cut out all the frames after. So if I want this whole little piece right here, I can just cut out up to, let's say, right here. And let's get a little preview of that. And there you go. There's one GIF. And then I can go ahead and save it and name it whatever. And as you can see in my folder, I have just like hundreds of GIFs. I just have just absolute nonsense for names. I used to be a lot better about naming stuff, but I just stopped caring at some point. But that's basically it, you know? I just go through the video, look for something that looks interesting, and then, oh, there was something right there. So, go back a little bit, hit new, just to make sure that everything is new, hit record, and then there you go. Just stop it. Size everything down, just to make everything look nice. And then just sort of look for the part that was interesting, which I think was this. Pretty sure. Just cut out the bits on either side, preview, and there you go. Save that, upload it to Tumblr, and I've got myself a GIF. And I mean, that's basically that. Again, if you need me to go into any more detail, just go ahead and ask. I mean, this is all pretty straightforward. I mean, the ROM corruption part, like, that ended up taking up a lot of the video, but it's basically just, you click a few things and then you just watch it go, you know? And, yeah, it's interesting. When I first started this, I put the word art in there just to sort of build up sort of, you know, SEO, search engine optimization, whatever you want to call it. And I mean, I you know, I don't consider myself an artist when I do this stuff, not really. I mean, there is, I guess, sort of you know, you have to have sort of an eye for this kind of thing, but it's not really, I don't know. There's not a whole lot of real expression going on. And I know somebody asked about that too, like, what exactly about this is art? And, you know, I don't really know. I'm sure someone out there can explain it to me, but I don't know. I mean, you just saw my process. It all seems pretty mechanical to me. I don't know. But yeah, that's about it. Again, if you have any comments, let me know, either in the comments here or preferably you go to this URL right here and you send me something there so I can reply to you, and so the thousands of people who look at that blog will see that as well. But whatever, that's it for me, so bye.